Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wolfed, a podcast for engineering leaders and those aspiring to deliver products and outcomes that matter. I'm your host, Christopher Cohen, and today I'm thrilled to have a conversation with Jimit Maheta, the Vice President of Engineering at Cisco, about how he scaled his teams and culture at the company for almost 3 decades. In today's episode, Jimit will talk with us about his secrets to transitioning from a Cisco contractor to a successful 27-year tenure at the company. Next, we'll cover how his teams have been successful by aligning personal and company goals. And then we'll learn how he stays on the never-ending learning path to remain a sharp and effective people leader. We'll close out the conversation by getting Jimit's perspective on creating a healthy culture of work-life integration for his global teams, which is a topic that I think resonates with a lot of us. With such an impressive run at Cisco, Jimit is something of a unicorn, even in the world of engineering leaders. There's so much to learn about these topics, so let's move on with the show. Today, we have the privilege of hosting a seasoned engineering leader who has navigated complex challenges, pioneered transformative initiatives, and propelled innovation in the realm of networking technologies at the one and only Cisco. From spearheading agile transformations to driving subscription-based software licensing transitions and a whole lot more, our guest has left an indelible mark on Cisco's enterprise landscape, where he currently works as the Vice President of Engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Jimit Maheta. Hello, Jimit. How are you doing, sir?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. And how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today. It's a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure as well.
Wonderful. Well, so to kind of get started, I want to, basically hear a little bit about, this is usually how I start with most guests, which is just, I want to hear about your initial exposure to software engineering and sort of the moment that, if there was a moment that you sort of decided that this was the career path for you, or what sort of ended up pushing you towards like, hey, this is what I'm going to do with my professional career. Could you give us a little insight into what that looked like for you, Jimit?
Absolutely, Chris. So this started back in 1995 when I was back in India studying my Master of Engineering in IIT Roorkee. So at that time, actually, I was studying in something called a communication systems, which is a telecommunication engineering course. And then I was going to have my master degree in that one. Also, my bachelor's degree kind of is also in the electronics and communication. So I didn't have any software background. But the industry's trend at that point of time was all about internet and software programming. So that's what the industry trend was, and the world was going to be revolutionized with these two things. That's what the industry expert used to say. Now, it happened to be during my master's, I actually did a thesis work on the something called at that time technology called asynchronous transfer mode. Now, this asynchronous transfer mode, as a part of that thesis, I had to do some simulation work and show it to. And that's when I came to know through my professors and everybody else saying that, hey, you should use software program. I've never studied it. I have not done
Right.
anything yet. Okay, of course, I've heard about it, but I don't know
Sure.
anything. And that's why, you know what, I should give it a try. It is a 6 months, the whole semester. I have to just work on the thesis. So I found some time for myself to study software programming, and I just learned it on my own and then wrote simulation program for my thesis to show some of my results and graphs and everything. That's how I was introduced to software programming.
That's quite a pivot right there, like during your master's program to like even your thesis pivoting over to this. I mean, did that catch you completely unaware? Was that having to put in an extreme amount of work in a short period of time, or what did that look like?
No, it was quite a bit of a work, but I was enjoying it. The second
Great.
part of it is that, see, my thesis was on a one particular subject, so I didn't change that subject, but I used the software programming to aid in that subject, to show my simulation result, to show my experiment. And I saw that, hey, this is pretty cool, man. Not too many people do that at that point of time. And so this will be very helpful to me. While in that process, actually, I enjoyed it, saying that, hey, what if I have to do it all over? And I have to continuously doing that because now, honestly telling you, back in 95, doing something with the software program and seeing the result coming out of you, it feels like a magic.
Right.
So that's what I felt. And I said, hey, this is not a bad idea to explore this. And that's how I was introduced to this one.
I mean, it still feels like magic even today a lot of the time. So I can only imagine 30 years ago, right? It's got to
True,
be, yeah,
true.
truly, truly mind blowing.
And then I'll tell you, there is an interesting story how I chose to be this as a profession.
Yeah,
Okay, so
please.
as being a master's in a communication system, of course, I was going to get job into the telecommunication field. And that's what actually ended up happening. That hey, I kind of was wanted to kind of get into that one, but then basically when I software programming point of view, right? In mid 90s, like I said, that we thought that this is kind of going to change the world for good and forever and revolutionize and all of those stuff. So that's when I really, really felt that I need to do something which has software programming. Now, because I was not the computer science, okay, I was CS, but CS is in a communication system, not the CS as a computer
I
science.
see. Gotcha.
So I thought it will be better for me to do something which combines my kind of a master's thesis or a theme with the software programming, software engineer. That's where I decided to join the telecommunications software engineering path. And that's how kind of that was my first job, started back in 1996.
Was that just a role as like an individual contributor, like just a software engineer at and where was that?
Yes. So I started back in 1996, right after my master's from IIT Roorkee into a company called Duet Technology. That
Gotcha.
was in back in Delhi, India. But it happened to be that they used to work with the companies over here in the US, and they get the turnkey project to kind of deliver for these companies.
Mm.
So I was lucky enough at that time to get to work on one of the Cisco's project over there in that company. The it calls LAN emulation. Again, it's a ATM, asynchronous transformer technology at that point of time, where local area network emulation was a software module which I wrote for
Oh
that
wow.
technology. And to install that module, Cisco called me over here back in 1997 for basically around few months. Hey, we need to launch this product. To support that launch, you have to be here live at Cisco at that point of time. You can't do it from India during
Hmm.
those times. That's how I came here and joined Cisco as a consultant.
And so, and you said at first, kind of, they're saying this is a few months contract. We want you here for a brief period of time, but I guess you must have blown them away, huh? For because here we are all these years
It's
later.
a both ways. So I came honestly here for only 8 months. I was supposed to go back after 8 months as my consulting project is over. But then I like the working environment. I like the technology and how Cisco was doing things. And Cisco probably looked like me also. So we had kind of a conversation, and I decided to kind of join Cisco as a full time employee.
See, this is what's so amazing to me about you, Jimit, is because I mean, especially in today's engineering culture, and I think even beyond engineering, but just like it's much more common that we see folks move from organization to organization every few years. Even if they're having a successful career at an organization, it just sometimes we hop around. We just tend to see that cadence. And but you're telling a story of working at Cisco in 1997 or starting around then, and here we are in 2024, and you're a vice president of engineering still at Cisco.
Cisco.
So it's an amazing story, and it's really unique that you've been at this one org for all this time. I want to hear from you a little bit about, like, I'm sure you've had other opportunities come along over the years. What's kept you at Cisco for so long? Well, let's start there. Like, yeah, what in particular has kept you,
So,
with one
so
org?
it's just a good question, and I know I'm kind of that way. One of the very few unique people in the valley who haven't changed every few years now and then. So, see, there is the reason why Cisco consistently is winning the award in last few years for number one best place to work for company among all of Fortune 500 companies in USA. Right? In my opinion, Cisco is one of the best technology company which is employee friendly and lets you bring best out of you without changing inner of yourself of who you are. Like in my early career days, Chris, I was looking to learn a lot about technologies, a lot of technologies and new things. And at the same time, of course, wanted to have fun at the work. Now, honestly, I was fortunate to work with or work among the best of the world at that time and learn from them. And I, of course, got a chance to make some cool innovation in the field of networking, change the world for good through our innovation, which is delivered by Cisco's products. The impact I was creating through my work on making internet faster, secure, and connecting the world at much rapid pace, right, along with Cisco's people-centering culture is what honestly kept me at Cisco. As an
Wow.
engineer, what do you want? You want to work on different technologies, learn new things every few years. Like whenever I desired that and I tried to get out, Cisco actually gave me the opportunity to change the team, change the technology. So Every 4 to 5 years, I've changed the team within Cisco. So
Hmm.
even though I didn't change the company for so many years, actually I was able to change technologies and teams every few years. So I actually satisfied my need of learning new things, new technologies. Cisco actually honestly provided me opportunity to have the career progression in my own hands. See, what you want is that, hey, life is a life, right? We all go through different phases of a life. Sometimes you want, I want to accelerate on my career. Sometimes you want, hey, I want to have a cruise control on my career and I want to focus more on my family.
Right.
Cisco being a large company and with a employee friendly culture, it gave me this opportunity where I can accelerate my career for a few years and sometimes say I'm on the cruise control where I'm enjoying what my role, but right now more focus is on the family. So essentially integrate a good work-life balance. And this is what honestly has kept me at Cisco for so long.
That's amazing. That's so cool to hear. And so, I mean, I have to imagine that as you've moved into more senior roles and as you're managing more and more people, that this approach, being so affecting for you, you've wanted to kind of pass that along to make sure your team feels the same way. I mean, has that been a really important, key for you as a manager to provide this same experience for your direct
Of
reports?
course, of course, right?
And
That is always the case.
and then I wonder too, like, the flip side there is, as the manager who wants to support their team members in being able to move where they want to go, how do we kind of keep an effective engineering team if we have folks who are kind of moving from one place to another? I mean, hopefully not that often, but enough that there's probably a lot of modularity there. How do we keep a certain level of consistency as a manager and keep an effective team?
See, my kind of a that way manager or the leadership principle is very simple, right? At the end of the day, a leader is successful because of the team. So, as a manager, as a leader, your job is to bring best out of the people and give them the environment where they can be successful. If you make them successful, you are successful automatically. Of course, I learned this few months into my role as a manager. But what I do from that point of view is that I have a career roadmap or a career dialogue with every individual at least once a quarter. And over there, you speak what do you want? How do you see yourself 3 year, 5 year down the road? What are your desires? And then you, as a leader, try your best to align the personal goals of that individual to the business goals. The best you are able to do it, the best you keep your team.
I love that. Absolutely makes a ton of sense. I guess too, I'm really interested hearing, again with your specific journey, like you've seen Cisco evolve through the .com boom, through the social media boom, and just like the changing tech landscape, and of course now going into everything being driving towards AI. I wonder your perspective on like how has Cisco changed as a company? How has engineering culture changed over the last couple decades? What does that look like, or is there anything in particular that stands out to you as remarkable?
See, there is something which hasn't changed, and there is something which has changed. And honestly tell you, both for the good. Something which hasn't changed is that people friendly, employee friendly culture. That was back in the late 90s when I joined, and that is still today. Whereas what has changed is the technology. See, Cisco, in a way, doesn't have any technology religion. We go with the business and how
Mm,
kind of the industry is moving. And that's what the best part of the technology company as well. And that's what I actually, like I mentioned before, that why am I here? Because I got to change the technologies when needed. So that's what is changing. And right now, for example, I've thrown like since Cisco back in the peak of the networking days to the now the days of the AI. We're talking about the AI, but the good part of is that Cisco has been integrating AI all along for past quite a few years. It's just that started talking about it in last one and a half
right.
year.
Gotcha. So you've been ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, but now it's coming to the forefront of sort of the
Yeah,
social conscious of the tech space.
exactly.
Um, so I wonder too, like if you're saying specifically that the culture has been very consistent, it's very employee focused, it's very growth focused in terms of letting employees stretch their legs and be their best self. I mean, where do you see your career at Cisco going from here? You're a vice president of engineering. What do you think as you kind of look forward? What's next for Jimit?
So I always kind of look from my point of view is that am I learning something new? Am I having fun at work? am I in the company of a good people? See, these are some fundamentals. Rest of the stuff from a career perspective or this or that perspective, that comes secondary. If about three categories are taken care of for me, I believe very firmly that rest of the stuff from a career progression or other stuff are on the sideline automatically, generally speaking, takes care few months or few quarters here and there. And that's how it is coming. So for me right now, from a Cisco point of view, right, is that how do I help Cisco position itself to the top of the technology curve through what we are doing? How do
Hmm.
we change some of the other wrong perceptions are out there from a Cisco perspective? But to me, at the end of the day, make the world better than what it is today through the help of technology.
I
And
mean,
that's
that's a
what keeps
beautiful
me
mission.
driving.
I love that. I love that so much. So speaking of interesting things that you've done in your different roles, I was curious to dig in with you about a couple of the initiatives you've led over your illustrious career at Cisco. One being that while you were director of engineering there, you spearheaded sort of a successful agile transformation for multi-billion-dollar product family. So first question top of mind for me: what methodology was Cisco using before agile?
So it is was a standard software methodology called waterfall model.
Okay, waterfall. Gotcha. And so when we're approaching a holistic revamp of an entire engineering culture, like, I mean, to me that sounds it's gargantuan. When you're considering this, Jim, and you're kind of like, okay, we've got to take everything that we're doing, we've got to modernize it for what's all the rage right now, which is agile at the time and still today. Where do we even start? What does that process look like for you?
So see, that was an interesting learning also. But I'll tell you one thing which basic stuff I will learn is that during that exercise, and we all together, right? Sometimes you are doing what is right. You don't need to change your fundamentals. Those things are working because those were the right things to do. Versus when you catch up yourself with the industry trend or a buzzwords or this or that and try to just blindly follow that, may not help you, may
Hmm.
not be successful for you. You always have to see what is right for you, your company. And I'll tell you, from a networking kind of projects and products we do, they're very complex. So in some aspect, waterfall model was a right way. But hey, was there a fine tuning needed? Absolutely. And that's what the learning came out of this exercise. That what we did is that, hey, it's like something when we say in the leadership, right? That begin with end in mind.
Hmm.
Whereas what Agile tells you is that, okay, look at 2 weeks, 4 weeks, kind of a smaller milestones, finish that, have different sprints, fine tune, fail fast, which are also good things. How do you combine these two together? Because here you are coming up with the networking infrastructure products which are going to be used for next decade. So
Hmm.
you have to think through all of that, which if you just think about the agile sprints, it's not possible. But once you think through that entire complexity and what you need for the 1 decade, and then you bring it back for execution point of view, that how do I cut this into the smaller milestone from a delivery aspect point of view? So I would say that my learning from that whole entire process through the agile transformation was that, a, with the main our concept of begin with end in mind, to see where are you ending, where do you want to go. With that, in execution point of view, how can I divide into the small part so that if something is not going in the right direction, I can, like, say, fail fast, so I can immediately know, I can fine tune, I can change little bit here and there. That was a learning, and that's how I did that one. Second part I'll tell you in this particular one was that more than the process part, it's also culture, people. They used to do these things for so many years.
Hmm.
How do you change? That was a one very good learning as well as a change management. Once you do these two parts successfully, I think it's fine.
Yeah, because I mean that's exactly what I'm so curious about. Is like we've got like you said, an entire culture that's so used to a certain approach, and I think you're making a great point about like, well, look, when we say we're revolutionizing this approach and going agile with it, obviously we want to keep the things that are working, right, and not just say, well, we're going to do agile for the sake of agile.
Exactly.
That's certainly like an excellent point. But I still have to imagine, like you're saying, I mean, there's got to be these difficult aspects to navigate, maybe even fostering buy-in at high levels, at low levels, so that everyone's kind of on board for this really, really massive
Yes.
transition. What were some of the most difficult roadblocks, and how'd you overcome them?
So roadblocks is that two main category: people and process. And process, when I say, it includes tools as well, because you were one way of doing things. So all your processes and all your tools were for doing that. And the second is that because you were doing it for so many years successfully, people were trained into it. People were kind of a very much biased towards that. So how do you first and foremost change that mindset that, hey, there is some fine tuning needed? So we had to look at advantages we get by having this bit of agileness. And the second one is also, why do we need it? What is not working today? You also need to know that.
Mm,
Like I was saying, that, hey, you're not changing for the sake of changing.
right.
You are changing for good, means, hey, there is something which is not working. So how do you articulate it and properly position it so that people understand that? It's not that people need to agree to you. It is that people need to see what you see. If you are successful at doing that, top as well as down, you're good. People will automatically align to you. Okay, people will understand why are you doing, what are you doing. But if you don't do that, hey, that's where the friction, that's where the
Mm,
struggle happens. Similarly, the second part, like I mentioned, that once you do that, you also need to think through that, hey, what processes and tools I'm using today as is, they are not going to be successful for me or helpful to me as is in my next revolution. So how do I do that? What do I need to change? What are the right tools? How do I evaluate that? So that's another exercise I did with few other kind of things, and other people also help, of course. So these two together actually helped us get there.
I wonder if you think that you were in particular in a uniquely advantageous position, maybe championing a change like this, having been a long-term Cisco employee. And do you think it would be more difficult for, if a new tech leader comes in and they say, "Hey guys, we're going to change how we do things," do they maybe have less trust than what you already had by being there for so long?
So definitely for somebody new will be difficult, not only because of the trust. Even if, let's say, you bring in a person whom you know for so many years, so many, basically what my point is, that trustworthy person, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point is that that person won't know your system. They don't
Mm-hmm.
know your existing people mindset, existing process, tools, as well as history. Now, to be successful for a transition, you need to have a knowledge of the past and expertise of today and tomorrow
Mm.
with the knowledge of future, or rather kind of where the industry is going or why, what we needed. The way we did it is that, of course, I had the history, I had the culture, I have the knowledge of the current process, tools, people. Of course, I wasn't the expert about the future or the agile or this or that. So first I invested time for myself to learn
Mm-hmm.
what people are doing, why people are doing that, what they gain out of it. And then I ask that question, that are the projects, are the software development, all of those things are apple to apple comparison, or we are comparing apple to orange? Again, if those projects and you're comparing apple to orange and you blindly take it over, there's a good chance for you to fail. We also hired some good new talent as well to help us in aid of this transition, because like
Mm-hmm.
I said, you need that new knowledge, you need that new expertise as well. But just you cannot rely on that only. So you need to have a combination of the past and future together for a successful transformation, or rather I should say transition.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm really curious on your perspective on this too, because okay, so Agile was sort of born in the early 2000s, and it really became, the industry standard, so to speak, maybe a little over a decade ago. And that was right around when you were doing this transformation, right?
Transition. Exactly.
So now here we are a decade on. I wonder how you think it holds up to today's engineering processes and culture. Do you think Agile is still the name of the game? Like, is it here to stay for a while yet, or is there something new on the horizon? Is there
No,
something
I
bleeding
believe
edge?
agile is definitely is there. At the same time, like I said, for an infrastructure project, see, so what you have to see is that agile has its own place where exclusively agile will work, and I will very firmly believe that that is for the application development. Okay, agile is the right thing to do only, versus for an infrastructure project where you're building up the system, operating system, or an infrastructure like large, which impacts so many other software layers, then you better begin with the end in mind. Okay,
Mm,
so that's where you have to plan, think, design, architect something for a long term, and then you bring it back from implementation point of view, bit in a agile fashion, where you can, hey, can I do some quick POC, which is in my opinion agile way? a proof of
Yeah.
concept if I can do it and see whether this is going to work or not work, rather than waiting for it to complete the implementation and then know, oh man, we missed that or it didn't work. That was the original waterfall idea.
Right.
Now, with this quick POC, that's how we transferred and merged those two together for the right project at the right level.
Beautiful. I love it so much. And I think that that's such a great distinction because, like, I think, kind of like we're saying, it's so easy to think of Agile as a blanket solution for every problem or every project. And it's like,
But
yeah,
that was
having,
not.
right, those delineations are so important. So one, to shift a little bit, I'm also curious about this. It's kind of a similar line of questioning, but about a different initiative you took on, which was that you basically from scratch built a team, developed apps, which helped with network automation using provided programmable APIs. You developed this app in just 4 months and had a successful customer demo, basically like making impact extremely quickly. So I've got a few different questions about this. But first of all, sort of at a high level again, just like my last question, what are your big learnings from taking on such a gargantuan endeavor from day one? How do we look at something like this and say, in 4 months, we've got to have something in front of the customer? How can we get going and hit that deadline when we're working at a scale of economy like Cisco?
So for that to kind of do that, first we need to understand that, okay, what customer is looking for. Now, I understand that within 4 months, such a massive project or such a massive piece, and in its entirety, you will not be able to do it. But this is exactly where I say that can you break down the deliverables in such a way where, hey, this portion or this space, we can definitely get it verified from customers, and customers can also see benefit in it. Okay, what's in it for me? So from that point of view, you have to give something substantial which they can use it. So that was a one massive exercise we did together as a team, saying that what is that pace? Once we identify that pace, then it was easy to kind of execute it. But identifying that piece was tough because, hey,
Mm.
you generally look at the system as a whole and then you say that, you know what, not possible. It's so massive. But once we finished that exercise, it was easy because, hey, now you know what to do and you can do it.
And I wonder, like, what were the dynamics of, like, how big of a team were you working with for this project? What was your oversight like?
So and if you don't mind, if which specific one you are referring to, then I
So
can.
this like building this app in 4 months and getting this deliverable for in front of a customer. Yeah, like what did that team size look like?
That team like will be around 7 to 8 people.
7 to 8. Okay. So
Yes,
a pretty lean team, especially when we're
yes,
talking about an organization of
yes,
Cisco's
yes,
size. So
yes.
I'm wondering then, like, obviously when a team gets lean, we can often move fast, right? Because there's
Exactly.
there's less red tape, let's say, or there's
Of
less
course.
like big picture coordination. I wonder the ways that you were successful in this endeavor. Can we scale that out to larger engineering teams, or is there a certain point where, like, the scale gets to a certain size where, like, well, this is not the right approach anymore, we have to move slower, we have to be more deliberate with our decisions?
So scaling a team, right? One of the major challenge always comes out, in my opinion, is that how to keep the same culture which you had in a lean small team. And when I say culture, the way I define culture is that things you do when no one is watching you. Okay. So that's one challenge. The second thing to keep in mind is that communication, how to keep everyone on the same page. So basically, the communication to ensure right message goes to the entire team with the right context. And the last point for a scaling of the team is a human dynamics.
Mm.
Because the larger the team size, the human dynamics complexity increases. So if you keep your eyes and ears open for the team and observe the silent behavior, listen to what is not said, and then keep fine tuning it, I think culture, communication, and this human dynamics aspect with this, like I mentioned, that keep an eye and ears open to listen to the team. As far as you can take care of these three aspects, then scaling team is fine. But if you miss one of this piece, challenges you'll start seeing popping up.
That makes sense. And then I wonder on the other side of it, like, did you have a lot of autonomy to make decisions quickly without having to navigate a lot of red tape? How do we navigate, like, hey, well, we do have to get approval from X, Y, or Z, or we have to get buy-in from A, B, or C? What did that
So
look like?
it's I had the empowerment for a project point of view, be it a directly reporting team or be it a indirectly reporting or a dotted line team. As far as they belong to project, I had that empowerment.
Mm,
Now, when I see that some of the decisions which impacts the dotted line team also based on their managers or their reporting chain or their culture point of view, I was conscious enough to ensure that I inform other those leaders. Basically, I call them
mm,
my peers or stakeholders.
sure.
Not that I need their explicit approval, but it is just so that they also understand why am I doing what I am doing, so that they're clear. As far as you keep those portions ready, because see, their interest is also tied to the success of the project because their part of their team is working on it.
Yeah,
Even though the empowerment and the responsibility was mine, they had that interest at their heart to make this successful because of their team. So as far as I kept them in the loop, it was okay. So I did not have too many red tapes to take care.
gotcha. That makes sense. I want to zoom out a little bit here and think about your career a little broader because again, you've been at Cisco not just as starting as an individual contributor, but then a manager and a director, a senior director, vice president. I mean, it's been an amazing evolution. I wonder, what this has looked like for you at each of these levels, and in terms of like, what have been your favorite aspects of each of these kinds of roles, your least favorite aspects? Where did you find yourself being more hands on the keyboard, less hands on the keyboard? Tell me a little bit about this journey specifically, and your favorite parts, or yeah,
Very,
things that you
very,
didn't.
very deep and insight question. But I'd love to answer that one. See, I want to tell you first the interesting story because the engineer to manager was a very interesting and unexpected transition. Actually, I never dreamed to be a manager or a people leader until that opportunity came.
I'm smiling because we hear this a lot on this podcast, but keep
Because see,
going.
this is honestly, this is where my first practical learning leadership lesson came was that, hey, a great leader identifies the individual's capability and puts that individual to the assignment of his or her own strength. Now, just to be very honest, my senior director back then in 2005 was a very great leader, I would say. So one nice morning, he just called me and he asked me that, hey, if I wanted to be a manager. And he did think that I will be a very successful people leader. Now, until that point, I never had that thought, like I mentioned before. So
Right.
obviously, I wasn't sure. So I mentioned my dilemma to him that, hey, I have never thought about it. So hence, I don't know whether I'll be successful as a manager or not. Now, he was actually more confident than me, and he actually provided courage as well as the opportunity to, hey, take this role kind of available as a manager leader, right? Experiment it for a couple of quarters. If you are not successful, you will be back to where you are without any kind of a negative side impact to you. So in a way, I would say that I got that safety net from him, and that's how my this journey started. But the first revelation, like what you mentioned over there here, is that during this transition, okay, was and a surprise learning too, but bit in a hard way, was that I'm a guy who used to ask myself, what did I do today at work? What did I do in last 1 week? What did I do in last 1 month? What did I achieve? Generally speaking, engineers are of that thing saying that, hey,
Mm.
what did I do? What did I achieve? Like something like that. And as a manager, what did I do today? What did I do in week or a month? And man, I'm lost. Because hey, I spoke to this, I did this meeting, I did this. But so what? What did you achieve? Nothing. And that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. But honestly, what came out of that learning or that exercise was that saying that, hey, as a manager, as a leader, actually you don't do this way, you don't measure yourself this way. Your success is in your team's success. You make your
Mm.
team successful. If you make that, you're done. So that's the first kind of a learning through this leader came, right? Now, honestly, after that, the learning kind of a where step by step, or what I call, or how do I call it, is that when you become manager to director, means leader of a leader.
Hmm.
At that time, you have to take care of your peers, your stakeholders. And honestly, I felt at that time that, man, this meeting and convincing others, and it's an overhead. I could do much faster, okay, if I don't have to do that. But that's where exactly another learning came after a few months, saying that you go through this exercise, you establish that relationship. You establish that trust, you bring people together, your future projects, your future work is much more faster.
Mm.
Okay, you bring people together. That's what the leader of leader kind of does, right? And then always favorite aspect of my evolution of a leadership role, right, is that this is a never ending learning path. You always have to learn. Either it will be new technologies, new soft skills, or new way of doing things. How to work with different personalities, how to work with different culture, different background, different geographies, and how always you do things faster than what you did yesterday. So that learning never stops in the leadership role. And that's what kind of helps me also because I at least satisfied that I'm learning something new every day.
Th- There's a lot that I love about that. And I mean, it's starting with, I think you highlighted such a beautiful example of the culture you're talking about at Cisco, where your manager came to you to say, like, I think, do you want this management role? I think you'd be great at it. You weren't sure, but they provided you an atmosphere. It's like, well, hey, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But in the
Exactly.
meantime, he believed in you, right? Like you said, he was more
That is
confident
very
than
true.
you were.
Yes. Yes.
And so I mean, I imagine that that had to be very affecting for you, and probably still influences how you when you think about promoting your own team members.
Exactly.
Having that culture of, like you said, a safety net where things are like we're it's not do or die, right? It's like
Exactly.
we think this is a good fit, and we're gonna stretch our
True.
wings, but not. Yeah, there's it doesn't have to be a job ending decision or anything like that. I think it's really interesting too that you talk about like almost as an individual contributor, things are so immediate in terms of how we measure our success. And it's like you said, it's what did I do today? What did I do in the last week? And there's tangibles, right? You can point to
Exactly.
lines
Yes.
of code,
Yeah.
even, right?
Uh-huh.
And so it sounds like as you've grown through these roles, it really starts to look like it's the essence of understanding long-term vision. You've spoken a lot about culture and about the importance of engineering culture, especially at Cisco. I wonder, along with that, what are other things that come to mind for you in terms of like what does it mean to be an exceptional leader in the engineering field? What qualities are essential for being an effective leader? What do you think?
So see, from a, I'll first put it in the leadership. And leadership to me is kind of when you're talking about the people leadership, number one is a never ending learning path. Okay. And engineering and technology leadership is yet another never ending learning path from a technology point of view because technology always changes. Now, if you don't learn, you obsolete yourself. Now, if you're a people leader in technology, you have a two streams of learning and you always have to be on top of it. So in engineering and technology field, you also need a constant innovation. And again, if you don't do innovate with you, your team, right? So then you yourself, your team, your company becomes outdated, obsolete. Because again, technology is a constant changing field. So
Hmm.
either you disrupt or you get disrupted by somebody else. The
Right.
essential qualities, in my opinion, from effective technology leadership is adaptive learning. And the second point, I say it is a servant leadership. Now, I want to do a little bit double click over there. The servant leadership, what I mean to say is that generally speaking, we introduce each other as if I'm working for XYZ.
Hmm.
Now, it's not that way. Actually, leader is working for the team. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that a leader's success is in the team's hand. If team is successful, leader is successful. Because leader himself or herself is not kind of a making something to be successful. His or her job is to provide an environment where every individual is successful and that way team is successful. So that's how I call that as a servant leadership. So if you are an adaptive learner and if you are a servant leader, then you'll be successful in the engineering and technology field.
When you're looking for skilled engineers, when you're looking to attract talent, and maybe you're looking for individual contributors that you're thinking this is someone who we can bring on board, and maybe they're going to grow at Cisco, or maybe there's just a gap in leadership at the moment, and we need to bring somebody in at a leadership level. How do you align what Cisco is looking for with these individuals, and how do you attract these the right fits to Cisco? Because of course this is a two-way street, right? Like Cisco's has a certain culture, but we need individuals who are going to benefit from that and who are going to thrive in
Yes,
that culture. What does that look
yes,
like for you?
yes. So see, like I mentioned, this is easier said than done. But the best thing a leader can do is to align the personal goal with the business goals. Okay. Now, Cisco definitely has their own strategy that this is what you wanted to do. Now, to do that, of course, you need the smart and talented and skilled engineers, right? Individuals. And you attract them, but to attract them, what you need to provide them is a trusted and I call it a culture, but what culture is that to me, a trustworthy, open and honest, transparent communication. Second part of that is culture point of view is that work life integration you provide them. And I'm very cautious about using this word work life integration because I used
Hmm.
to call it probably 1.5 decade back. I used to call it work life balance.
Right.
No more work life balance in the global economy and kind of thanks to COVID pandemic that now you work from anywhere remotely for timing point of view, timing boundaries are gone. Earlier you used to have 8 to 5, 9 to 6 culture. Okay, so work life balance. But work life integration means that, and this is where kind of helps me attract and retain talent, where you ensure that every individual is a whole individual. There are not two personalities, right? A
Mm.
person is not successful at work if something is happening on the personal life or a home front. A person is not happy at a home or in personal life if something is not happening properly at the work life. So it impacts both sides. So you as a leader, how do you understand that person as a whole? As far as you give every individual that trust that they can share things with you to help you understand them better so that you can bring best out of them, you can provide that environment to them where they can flourish, then they're happy. That's what they want. And this is what I mean by the work life integration, that you need to ensure that work needs or a work requirements are satisfied. At the same time, personal needs and personal life things are also satisfied. Those requirements are also satisfied. So that's a very fine, delicate balance a leader has to do.
I really like that take on, okay, well, work life balance in a lot of ways is a thing of the past, right? Like let's say it, let's admit it. Because and instead it's a shift in mentality, right? It's not that we're
Exactly.
saying, just because we're in a post-COVID world where there's a lot of remote work and your job is a moment's notice away on your phone, it doesn't mean that it has to rule your life. It just means we
Yes.
have to think about it. It's not that it's a balance anymore, like you said, it's an integration.
True.
It's a different kind of balance. I think uh, recognizing that is so important, and I think that's actually interestingly like a much healthier approach than trying to still cling to this idea of like, well, a 9 to 5, right? Like we could still work a 9 to 5 when the truth is,
It's not possible. In a
right? Like
global economy, when you have global teams, honestly, that's not possible. And you have to be upfront about it.
right, and I think that's fine because what that means is, well, it's not a 9 to 5, but it does mean that it's a 9 to 10, and then it's a 10:15 to 11, and then it's a 11:30 to, because right, it's work. You need to work when you need to work, and you
Exactly.
don't when you don't.
And see, like the other thing, even like say 9 to 5, but then there is a program at a kid's school. Hey, there is some kids urgency came up or medical needs came up, and you need to go out
Right.
for 2 hours. Or hey, there is some program at the kids school which you want to go and watch. There is kids game. That integration you have to allow.
Hmm.
You cannot be rigid or strict about it.
It's I that resonates with me very highly. I wonder, do you think there is still room for someone to say like, you know what? No, I work a 9 to 5. Those are my boundaries. Is that still something that it's worth supporting? For those individuals that really feel like that's what's best for them.
So you understand. See, those individuals, it is, in my opinion, it is worth supporting for every individual from an individual need point of view. The
Mm,
only caveat I'll put is that are you able to align, like again I mentioned that personal objective with a business strategy or a business action or a business goal. What I mean is that, like for example, in my team, I have a global team in 3 different geographies. If I can give such individual an assignment which doesn't need to be have any interaction or any collaboration with the other side of the geography where he has to work or interact or collaborate during off hours, then completely fine, let's do that. But if I'm not able to do that, then that's where I have to have the discussion.
I see. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. Um, Tell me a little bit about And I mean, and again, I guess in the context of Cisco, engineering leadership when it comes to IC work. I know we've heard on this podcast a lot about there's some organizations where you people leaders are truly that they really are people leaders, and yes, of course, we're still very involved with the strategies and with tech, but hands are not on keyboards that much at a people leadership level
So,
versus others where it's very much promoted that even VPs of engineering and stuff are still very much like, hey, half your day is spent coding. What does that look like for you, Jim? And what does it look like at Cisco?
so in Cisco, actually, we definitely believe that people leader has a job to do to make people successful. Now, having said that, you don't have to be completely non-technical.
Mm,
So you have to have a very good fine balance of a technical versus this one. So, in my opinion, what I firmly believe and what makes me successful, I believe, is that you are able to understand the technicals and you are able to double click when needed to ensure the team is progressing in the right path,
mm,
or you are able to double click and help the team when needed, but at the same time you don't need to do your team's job. otherwise
sure.
they feel Otherwise they feel that, hey, if I'm there, or if my manager or my VP is doing this, why am I needed?
Right.
So that's a fine balance you have to draw. Second part of that technical stuff, I would say, is that, and this is where the real leadership comes. Of course, I can do the things and then I'll be maybe the smartest person on the world. I'm not saying that I am, but let's say,
Sure.
but then for a scaling purpose, okay, you need team.
Hmm.
And when you have a team, you need a leader. And the leader's job, be it a individual delivery and get things done, or a scaled delivery from the team and get things done. Again, a very fine balance to draw. And then Cisco point of view right now, definitely being a large company with such a massive portfolio and a massive impact, we definitely have taken this approach where, hey, you have to be technical. You are not completely offense, but at the same time, you're not doing your team's job. You are not one of them from that
Right.
aspect point of view, but you are able to double click, you are able to review it, you are able to contribute to it if needed, or ask question as appropriate.
That's great. I think that sounds like a great balance to me. And I know that there's success in any of these approaches. It's not that one's right versus and another one's wrong. But yeah, I'm just interested to kind of hear what that looks like for you and Cisco in general. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit and ask you a couple questions that I ask everybody as we kind of wind down, just because I'm curious if things come to mind right away for you. One thing I like to ask is what's one piece of advice that you wish you had received earlier in your career?
So I wish that somebody had taught me people leadership and tell me, hey, you make people successful. You take care of your people and you'll be taken care of.
And so do you mean like in the sense of like what sort of broadly like this goal of what it means to be a good people leader or do you mean even more specifically like how do we train leaders to be leaders?
No, what I mean is that, like, see, when somebody does something new at that time, generally speaking, an experienced person or somebody will come and say that, hey, watch out for this, or just keep this thing in mind, you'll be successful.
Sure.
You be you, but just keep this thing in mind, like that way.
Mhm.
Okay, so if somebody would have told me that, that would be awesome.
Do you go out of your way to make a point of doing this for your direct reports?
So I do, but like I say, that first I understand the individual. If that individual
Mm.
is kind of in that frame of mind where he or she kind of ready to accept this, then definitely yes.
It's always like to hear that we're making raising a better generation, right? Making taking
Yes.
these learnings and passing them on.
So
Okay, how about this one? And again, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but does anything come to mind in terms of like a personal habit, a personal routine that even if it's daily or weekly or monthly or just something that you are consistent with that you think has contributed to your success in your career or as a leader or anything along those lines?
it is all about kind of a thinking proactively and planning point of view. I'm of a personality where almost every week I want to take a stab at where am I, what am I doing, why am I doing, how am I doing with respect to what we thought of, any fine tuning needed. And honestly, when I get too busy where I don't get that time to do so, I feel a little uncomfortable.
Mm.
So I immediately try my best to get it in under control.
Is it something like you literally schedule into your calendar, or is it just kind of ad hoc? Or
No, generally speaking, I keep an hour or two in a weekly basis in my calendar. But yes, you can understand very easily. Many times it goes away because
you're right.
something pops up.
And I guess last thing I'm curious about, because of course, like we said, like in today's modern culture, it's work life integration, not work life balance, and things often creep in where you wish you were disconnected from work, but it's hard to be. So, Jimit, when you find yourself being a ball of stress, how do you diffuse that? What do you do to kind of disconnect and maybe recenter yourself?
Okay, so for me, actually, I'm a bit of a, that way I would call myself a big spiritual person. So
Okay,
I'll just think about few things like control what you can, influence what you can, try your best, leave the rest. Second thought I give to myself, okay, bit in a hard way, but hey, everything happens for good. And the other best thing I do is that on a daily basis, I speak with my spouse. So by talking to her, it helps
that's
about what
beautiful.
happened, what's going on in the workplace. That does happen.
Wonderful. That's so great. Well, I just gotta say thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today, Jimit. It's been inspiring to hear your insights that you've garnered from your long career. I really appreciate that you took the time to join us today. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It has been a great conversation. I definitely enjoyed it.
Very glad to hear that. So that'll do it for us today from the Den of Wolft. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations with fascinating engineering leaders like Jimit. And until next time, I'm Christopher Cohen from QA Wolf.